All right, welcome into another Front Office Sports webinar. Really psyched about today's panel and the topic. We're going to be talking about growing an audience on emerging social platforms, with TikTok being one of the center part of it and beyond. Feel free, like we see in the side over here, to jump in and say hello. We have over 700 people registered for this webinar. Lots of good conversations and questions that should happen. And we're really excited and thankful for Conviva and their help in putting this on and promoting it and giving everyone who has the opportunity to join in. Obviously, everyone's working from home. We're trying to figure it all out, but hopefully we can use the next hour to provide a ton of great insight and dialogue into emerging platforms, TikTok, and everything else that we're talking about as digital esports and all of these different areas have come to the forefront with traditional sports on the sidelines. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to our panelists to introduce themselves. Again, we have some great people to kind of provide you guys with insight and guidance. And I'm going to start with Chris over at NASCAR.
Hey, thanks. So I'm Chris Littman, the director for social media content with NASCAR based here in Charlotte. I manage the team that does everything you see on our social channels. So that could be traveling to the track, producing content from in our studio, and everything in between, like TikTok too.
Awesome, appreciate it. And Samantha from the Eagles.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sam Wood. I am the Director of Digital and Social at the Philadelphia Eagles. Been here 5 years now, 5 seasons. And similar to Chris, I manage what you see coming out of the Eagles on social media, as well as our overall digital content strategy. So content for the app, site, what have you. And that includes TikTok, my new favorite platform.
Awesome, great. And then Nick from Conviva, who's joining us from the beautiful Catskills Mountain.
That's right. Hey, everybody. I'm Nick Cicero. I'm the Vice President of Strategy here at Conviva. We're a social streaming analytics platform, a social and streaming intelligence platform. We work with folks like NASCAR and the Eagles, the NFL, and others to be able to help measure all of this awesome content, both on social media, but then also on all of your owned and operated apps and OTT apps as well. So really excited to be here with you guys.
Awesome, appreciate it. And like I said, you guys, if you have questions throughout the next 45 minutes to an hour, please jump in the questions tab, add them there. We'll try and get to them as we go. But I'm going to kick this off with just the main topic and the biggest, kind of thing in the room being TikTok. Samantha, I know obviously you guys have seen a lot of success over the last year with TikTok. We'd love to just have you kind of dive into Eagles, TikTok. What was the light bulb moment and where you guys are going with that platform?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I absolutely love TikTok. I downloaded it, as all good social media people should do. The first time you hear about a new app, download it, play around with it for yourself. And I personally became addicted to it, and I continue to be addicted to it personally. And then when the NFL created a partnership with TikTok, we saw that opportunity there to really take advantage of that new platform and a completely new audience. I mean, I think that's the number one thing, that it's reaching an entirely new set of people. We've seen across the board that the overlap with TikTok and our other social platforms is extremely small. So the opportunity there is huge. I have to shout out my team, but specifically Olivia Schaller. She's our intern. She is the TikTok queen with a KW. She's awesome, and she's really taken that going, and it works out because she's young and she gets it. But for us, we just went right into it, experimenting. Like, sillier the better. Having a variety of content is big. Getting our biggest resource, our players, involved has also been a huge win for us, and the players are now making their own TikTok accounts. So it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the main goal always is just to entertain people and give them a glimpse into what's going on at the Eagles, whether that's staff, players, throwback stuff. I mean, whatever it is, you're going to find it on our TikTok, and not being afraid to try something that maybe will fail. So we love it. We saw a lot of success. We got around 700,000 followers in that first year. I mean, it's been less than a year. We started in September. So I think that was a really surprising amount of success. We did not have high hopes, and it really has surpassed everything. So it's kind of my roundabout way of explaining how we're working on TikTok.
Awesome. Any one thing that, if you could pick one thing that stood out to you, what was kind of that one thing that stood out to you from the last year?
I think it's the unpredictability. There were some TikToks we made that I absolutely loved, and I thought we're going to kill it and we're going to go viral, and they just completely fell flat. And then there were other ones that were sitting in our drafts for weeks because, we try to do one a day, and we finally just threw it out there, and millions of views. And so we make predictions about what we think might work on TikTok, but to be honest, part of the fun of the platform is not ever knowing. And so for me, it's been and I've been doing social for 10 years now, and it's been kind of a throwback to like old social, where it was like truly creative, can do anything. Not that people don't care about it. Clearly we're doing a webinar about it, but it's kind of like the Wild West of social. And so to have that exercise amongst our entire team has been great, and sort of energized everything else on our platform. But yeah, number one, unpredictability for sure. I mean, I still don't know what's going to hit and what won't hit, and that's the fun.
That's awesome. Chris, I'm going to throw it over to you for your guys' kind of just TikTok synopsis.
Yeah, we were chatting before we came on. I think Samantha and I both launched around the same time. I think we were mid-October last year. It was really one that we were debating, like, do we hold over until the start of 2020? I was really glad that we didn't wait until the new year to launch. We kind of approached it from a unique standpoint too, in that we lurked for a long time. I think we had a bunch of people personally on their own accounts. Like, it's, I'm definitely the oldest one of the group and on our staff. And it was like, downloaded TikTok as a joke, and here we are. But I think like a lot of lurking, listening, not making any assumptions about, the platform. I think that's probably one of the huge mistakes I've seen in other conversations I've had with people who are maybe thinking about venturing into the platform, is like they have their perception, whatever sort of like millennial Gen Z stereotype you want to throw out there. And I think it instantly colors their content strategy. So we went in very open-minded, did a lot of listening, did a lot of looking at, I think the NFL was one great example, because they obviously from a league and team standpoint had a lot of launch around, I think it was early September when everyone got going. Kind of saw some similar content buckets that we thought we fit in, whether it was like sort of the wholesome inspirational content, funny content, or, I think just like what I would call like the visually interesting action content. And we tried to build out, sort of a TikTok reserve of our greatest hits, because we knew, just like Tim said, wasn't a ton of overlap, I don't think, in this audience, especially as you got into that For You feed versus like someone who even follows us on one of our younger platforms like Instagram or Snapchat. So we felt really comfortable kind of playing our greatest hits at the beginning there. And literally, like, we went in and we were like, hey, this was our top performing Instagram post from 2019. Let's roll that out there and give it a shot. And sure enough, it was a huge hit over there, even though it was like kind of irrelevant at the moment to like what was happening in the sport. It was just visually interesting and cool. So that's sort of how we've launched. We have one person on our team, Tyson Winter, who owns it a little bit more day to day, but it's really a collective effort of our whole group, whether it's creating and cutting content or just coming up with ideas, starring in content. I think literally anyone who works for us has probably appeared in a piece of TikTok content at this point. Because like for us, we launched going out of a season, which is really strange. Yeah. I mean, I think the NFL, with the league and the teams, they launch going in. So boom, you instantly have action. We had 4 or 5 races at the end there, and certainly made the most of it. We even painted a TikTok logo on the front stretch of our championship race that millions of people saw on television, which we then made into TikTok content. But then we went into the off season, and it was December, and the whole office goes ghost, and it's like, what do you do? And in an odd way, that was probably good training for what we're going through right now, because you have to sort of be creative and think about what do you do when there's not action on the track. But anyway, that's how we've rolled into it, and I think it's top of mind for everyone daily. And I think it's probably my favorite platform to be on right now, because I love the community there. I think like there's genuine, like earnest excitement, curiosity. I love the interaction, and it's something I look forward to daily.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like a couple questions. Yeah, go ahead, Nick. I was going to say.
I was just going to say, it sounds like, Chris, you talk about really going into a new platform and listening first and going and exploring. And I think that's really an interesting point to bring up is a lot of people wonder, how do they actually jump into a new platform? It doesn't even have to be TikTok. It could be, IGTV. It could be Facebook Watch. It could be really any new platform. So you talk about listening and thinking about what your voice is going to be and testing the content. I'm curious to know, like, if the two of you guys had any examples of other things that you might want to consider if you are getting ready to jump into TikTok or any platform.
Yeah. I think for me, I mentioned it earlier, but audience is the key. I think people get very excited about what a new platform could be. And then they sort of, it's sort of the press release mentality. Like they want to like put a press release out, like we were the first, and there is value in that. But when it comes to sustainable content strategy and how you pick your platforms, you really do need to think about what audience you're trying to reach. If I had limited resources, which we all do, and my number one goal was to sell tickets, and maybe my ticket price was pretty high, TikTok might not be the number one priority for me in terms of when I'm deciding resources and deciding when to jump on things. However, for the Eagles, we're really more focused. We've got a very long season ticket waiting list, luckily, and we're more focused on growing the game and growing the fan base with that younger audience. So TikTok makes perfect sense. So really being surgical about what audiences you're trying to reach, and knowing that not every single platform, you don't need to be on every platform. And in fact, you're doing yourself a disservice if you do that. So that's the thing that I think people forget to think about. And it helps really clarify strategy if you go about it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point about audience too. And I think in the same way that like in 2019, we did, certainly TikTok was an addition late in the year, but we were really focused on, Instagram and YouTube as a way to reach a younger, more diverse audience, create future fans and things like that. And I think when it was abundantly clear that we had to be on TikTok, we certainly weren't early by any stretch. I'd like to think we weren't late, but I think, that just became part of that prioritization of audience. And I think also understanding and being comfortable with the fact that part of like getting on there and launching and us understanding the difference in that audience is like how we can take one moment and use it two completely different ways on two different platforms. Like the example I use is one of the first posts we ever had was this, a tire came off a car, which like in the most straight, literal, down the middle sense of it is actually like sometimes a safety concern for our competition group. And so on Twitter, I'm probably not going to make a joke about that because I think Sam, to the point you were making earlier, and Adam as well, about TikTok sometimes feeling like the Midwest. Like sometimes it's because maybe it's not where your executives always are, or something like that, and you can be a little more fast and loose with something on TikTok. So like that rolling tire that was sort of a play-by-play moment on Twitter became like a meme about rolling away from your responsibilities on a Sunday, and like that's just the difference of I think when you go in and launch one of these platforms and think about the audience up front, you kind of develop a different type of strategy that just instantly in that moment you see it and you go, okay, Twitter, it's going to be this, but TikTok, it's going to be this other thing.
Mm-hmm.
From your guys' standpoint too, and I think this is a big question for everyone. I know the Bulls kind of had mentioned how they monetized. Are you guys monetizing TikTok, actively monetizing TikTok? Have you had those questions, those opportunities? I would love kind of probably to talk through those because I know it's probably going to be a question that comes up.
Yeah. So for us, the caveat is we are beholden to the NFL policy, and we are happy to have them. So it's a little bit of a gray area right now. We are actively speaking with sponsors about TikTok and working on what that would look like. But right now, because it's so new, it's one of those things where we are still sorting out what that's actually going to look like. But I think 100% that is in our future. And it's, of course, I hope it goes without saying, but it would be very integrated content. You wouldn't really see at least on ours, you wouldn't see any sort of like logo bug or anything that's like directly promotional, and I would suggest thinking about that for anybody else that goes down that road. So we're talking with sponsors that really do fit with what we think our TikTok audience would like to see, but as of yet we have not crossed that completely because we do need to make sure that we're doing everything on the up and up. So that's how it works for us.
Yeah, I know on our side, we've not done anything sponsored on the platform, and I've sort of kept my arms around it a little bit, but not in an effort, obviously, like everyone, I'd never stand in the way of revenue or anything like that. But the thing that I think continues to scare me a little bit is what Sam called out about the unpredictability. And like, what does a sales package around that look like? And obviously, I think like some of the media that was done around the Benny the Bull sponsorship stuff was like instantly that one started pinging around to everyone's inboxes, like, oh, we can sell this. And I think you can. I think the question is like, okay, when you have that unpredictability of content where one can get 20,000 views and one can get 22 million, like we did, like what are you selling against? If it's just the single piece of content and everyone's going to be comfortable with that in the end, no matter what the deliverable is, then okay. But if you look at it maybe on how other digital packages are sold, whether it's impressions or something like that, do you get into a spot where now you have to deliver like 12 pieces of branded TikTok content to fulfill a sponsorship? I think there's a lot to be learned there. I mean, I don't know if anyone from the Bulls is on and part of this. They've done an incredible job with Benny the Bull stuff to the point where it kind of seems like it's the leader for them probably as a franchise, more so than the Bulls account. Mm-hmm. And I think now they've got this floor that makes it accessible to sell. I do wonder in the long term, like I think you're going to have to build a certain floor before you really go out and sell it like them.
For us in the initial conversations, we have come up with a range. So like our absolute worst performing TikToks we've ever done, and there are some in there. What did that look like in terms of viewership? And then our best, and being really forthright with sponsors about, not selling on impressions. We never, make promises about how that's going to do, but sort of like coming with us on this journey, like who knows? So that's been how we're approaching it. And I think, like I said, we'll have that coming soon. But yeah, no, it's a completely different new way of thinking about it. And it does require quite a bit of trust, understanding, and savvy on the part of the sponsor.
Yeah, I think that the nice thing about TikTok from what I've seen so far, especially for sports teams and leagues that have some type of in-stadium or event experience, it's a great way to kind of extend that package. So this is really where selling across multiple social and physical touch points really helps as you start to kind of evolve a branded content plan. So we've started to have discussions with a lot of our customers and folks like you guys as well about the monetization. We've talked with TikTok and their perspective on it. One of the really great things is that you've started to see some of the brands that have already spent a lot of money, like Walmart, bring people into the store, right? Almost tap into that shopper marketing type of attitude where you're bringing people into Walmart, they're doing a dance, passing it on, doing the next challenge, and getting your fans involved. Obviously, TikTok is a very kind of participatory platform in that type of way where people can pick up and pass that on. Those are different ways that I think that especially teams and leagues and anybody that has a physical location can start to think about obviously monetizing their own content, because obviously you can extend that and bring in different elements of that and have that be a TikTok challenge, but you can obviously anchor that and create Instagram posts that might promote that challenge too. And then you have this kind of blended package that you bring out to your partners.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And I'm gonna kind of finish at least this segment with, for you guys, if you had one or two things that you knew about TikTok that now, like what is it that you would wish you would have known when you first started that you know now, and how have you kind of changed your strategy around that?
Mm-hmm. For me, I think realizing that TikTok doesn't penalize you for bad content. So I think, like I mentioned before, in the spirit of experimentation and throwing it at the wall and seeing if it sticks, like not being so afraid of it not being perfect, because TikTok, part of the beauty of it, and I'm not making this up, we did hear it from TikTok, it's an actual thing. You're not getting the rest of your content is not being brought down if you have just like a real stinker of a post. So that by employing that strategy and just not being so worried about like, is this a little too weird or does this not really fit, and just seeing it. That's where we've been able to have a lot of success in, some of those posts that, like I said, I did not expect to win. So, yeah, like, I think people get so bogged down, like you need to have like a fully baked strategy before you commit to something. And yeah, you want an idea of like who's going to be making this content and who's the point person, the day-to-day, but like in terms of what the content looks like, letting the platform determine that for you is really the best bet. People get so worried, like Chris said, not assuming what's going to happen. They get so, scared about that, just experimenting. So anyway, that's what I wish I had known from the beginning. And we've definitely learned that lesson over and over again, which is part of the fun. So.
Yeah, I don't think that's far off for me either. I think just being open to testing and trying, I felt like we started pretty well, and like we actually had what felt like pretty good success early on, and then like we had 2 weeks where it felt like nothing was doing well, and I was like reaching out to our rep. We work with the TikTok, and I'm like, what did I do? Did I break it? Did I like? I'm sitting like the weekend of our championship race, like nothing is like no one is seeing anything, and then like it just. We started to have some stuff hit again and started to get back into a little bit of a rhythm. It's, I think just like shooters, you got to keep shooting, man, like keep going. And it's probably like the platform where I'm very rarely saying to my team, like, no, or change that idea. Like it's the one that I'm very open to, like, sure, let's try that. It might not be the first like post I would have thought of today, but like, let's give it a shot. And there have definitely been times we've done them where I was like, okay, maybe I should have spoke up. And then there have been a few other ones where it was like, oh, wow, like that corner of TikTok was completely unexposed to me. And I didn't, because like, I'm sure you guys have all had that, right? Like I'll come to my team and be like, you guys have seen this meme with this sound, right? And they're like, they all look at me like I'm crazy. And then conversely, they've got something that has completely not been exposed to me. So I think it's way bigger than we realize. And I think just being open to like letting up, like that's the nice thing about having a few different people on our team that can contribute is you can have these different ideas that can come in. And I think generally there are no bad answers right now.
Yeah, and obviously you can then measure all of those different types of content that you're creating and thinking about the different themes and seeing what types of different, whether that's the music that you put in or the challenges or the hashtags, obviously testing and learning. One of the questions that I'm seeing pop up quite a bit in the chat here is about content and licensing. So for certain groups, whether that's music licensing, I think I saw Tatiana ask about music licensing. I saw somebody else ask about rights to video content. Obviously, the NFL, all the different teams are working, and same thing, NASCAR, you guys have lots of media partners. I think it'd be really great to maybe first talk about any music challenges or licensing things that you're considering, and then the same thing with like the content itself. So talk about that.
We actually had a weird thing happen. And I doubt this would apply to anybody else, but I'll tell you about it. We kept getting flagged for our own audio, even if there was no music part of it, like fully flagged with like taken down. Finally, we figured out that it was flagging us because it thought we were the band, the Eagles, whose songs you will not find on TikTok. So now that we're at Philadelphia Eagles, go follow us. So that was weird. But when it comes to music licenses overall, we've been trying very hard to use, I guess, these like the verified songs. I'm sure some people ran into it as we did, where, old things were getting taken down because the songs, I don't really know the reason. I'm assuming it's because we have a lot of followers and the songs are no longer on TikTok. They get locked down because of the copyrights. So looking at what songs at TikTok are putting us towards, the trending ones, the verified ones, that helps us making sure that nothing gets taken down. It's also a reason, not the only reason, but it's a reason why we do not cross-post our TikToks. We've tried it on YouTube, gotten a couple of copyright things there, but to be honest, we sort of let it live where it is because of this music issue. But we've been working with influencers a lot. So the Crypto 9095, the guy that did the Whoa song, he came down. His record label reached out to us. He came to the facility and we did some TikToks with him. Our most popular ones are with him. And that was a way to sort of collaborate with those artists and make sure that, they're not going to take down our songs, and we can take advantage of, we can both help each other. So that's all this to say, music is a very big issue, but using the tools that TikTok has given us, I think helps us in not trying to be sneaky about it, because they will catch you because they catch us. So yeah, playing by the rules. Also, hi, Amy. Oh, she says I'm a TikTok goddess. Hi, love you. She's a goddess too. She's from the Panthers. You should talk to Amy next. Ask her all your questions in the chat. Okay, go ahead, Chris.
No, it's I was gonna cede the floor to Amy. I was like, she's the superior Charlotte person in here now, since we're like in the same area code. So, no, I thought your point about taking TikTok content to other platforms, that's definitely flagged in my mind a few times about, Instagram or Facebook, they're not going to care when somebody gets, you know, that DMCA notice comes to them, or there's a takedown notice, like, oh, well, it came from TikTok. Like, that's not their agreement.
Right.
And it definitely seems like, you know, look, there's definitely that move fast and break stuff mentality with all of these kind of like young social platforms. And I think with TikTok, they're definitely figuring out some of the music stuff as they go along. Even like I've gone back and looked at some of our old content that was definitely not original sound stuff from someone and has been turned into original sound, or sound that's been taken down that I'm like, that was definitely not an original sound. It was part of the, so I'm sure labels, you know, no different than if anyone on this, you know, today's session uses like APM music, like stuff falls in and out of license there. And I'm sure they're running into the same issue with labels saying like, nope, end of this month, that song comes off. And then that has a ripple effect on content. So yeah, I mean, I think we're taking a really careful approach. I think where we've seen, you know, original sounds, when we first went in, I was like, no original sounds, period, for the first couple of weeks. And it increasingly felt like that was just not, like we were almost holding ourselves to too high a standard. And as we started to see some of the, you know, the original sounds that became part of bigger things, like you can't do this like hashtag without using this original sound. We kind of got a little more comfortable using that stuff. And now I think we're generally on par. I don't think we're any more or less, you know, risk averse than anyone else at this point with the sounds. But I'm curious to see, I mean, you know, to hear it directly from TikTok in the weeks and months to come, you know, really interested to see how they manage this problem, because it seems like every single social platform has had to deal with social licensing, or music licensing, I should say.
Yeah. I'll also add too, because I see it coming up a lot, about sharing. So I just want to clarify my point. So I love that you can download and share across other platforms on TikTok. I think that's part of its charm. We've tried that a couple times for us, and it just did not work. When we first launched it, we've tried it without pointing out that it was from TikTok. The tolerance level for it across other platforms has been low. I think that's changing. I think older people are jumping on now. It's getting more popular. But we sort of realized that sharing across other platforms does not help us in engagement at all, because you're giving it to them right there. If you're on Twitter, you're going to watch it there, and then you're not going to be like, let me open another app, follow the Eagles on TikTok. So for us, it was a little bit of a, not a waste of time, but just sort of a failed experiment, and it didn't make that much sense. I do love when our fans take it, or when people repurpose it, or all that sort of stuff. I think that's great. The risk of all the copyright stuff and, you know, what we were just speaking about is not worth the reward of those few people that might be like, oh, the Eagles have a TikTok. If you're on TikTok and you're an Eagles fan, you're going to find us anyway. That algorithm is the best one I've ever seen. So you'll figure it out. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify that, because I know it just keeps popping up.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that we've always said about TikTok, is that when you get started on it and using it, it gives you a chance to kind of flex your creative muscles in a different way, where you don't have to cater to those hardcore fans and get the news and the updates and the same type of player transaction news that you guys might have, or the driver updates that you might be putting on other platforms. So it gives you that ability right away to go in with a different mindset, to try new content types, to think about different ways, and to be experimental.
So as part of the emerging platforms part of this discussion too, not only is there TikTok, but we've had an explosion of platforms right in the last probably 2 to 3 years, right? You have Facebook Watch, Snap, Twitch has really come on strong, obviously now with esports being a big thing, and Chris can probably talk about that too. For you guys, you know, how are you determining what platforms are worth the continued investment right now? We were talking about TikTok, and you were both strong in there, and we'll get back to TikTok, but some of these other emerging platforms that people are still trying to figure out, I'm assuming you guys are still trying to figure out, what's the thought process there from an organization standpoint? Where are you seeing success? Where are you leaning in and out of and saying, hey, maybe we'll put more here and less here?
Yeah, for us, like I think a good example is, Snapchat. We don't use Snapchat anymore. We still have an account, but ever since that redesign, it just doesn't make a ton of sense for us. We saw a rapid decline in views, and that audience, we felt, like I said, it always is back to audience for me, but that age group, that type of audience, we found we were getting perfectly well on Instagram stories. So Snapchat also was kind of a pain in the butt in terms of analytics and how to produce for that platform. So for us, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. Another example is IGTV. We've experimented with that quite a bit. Haven't seen a ton of success, to be honest. So we really don't put a ton of resources behind that. But what we have seen success in is like a YouTube. That's kind of a similar audience as IGTV, a similar type of content, and the added benefit of huge growth potential, huge potential for engagement. And really, for me, number one thing is huge potential for monetization, which is not something that IGTV offers. So playing those games and trying to prioritize what's important to you, I think, is the key. And I always say it's like the Jurassic Park rule, like just because you can doesn't mean you should. You know, we are not on Pinterest anymore. We could be. I have no desire, and I can't imagine that we will. But for all of these things, we are not married to anything. I am happy to jump back and forth. If Snapchat tomorrow becomes something that's really useful for us, we will be back on Snapchat just with everybody else. So, but audience, and trying really to establish those goals, which seems so dumb and easy, but so many people don't do that. So those are the kind of platforms that we're looking at now.
Yeah, and for us, I mean, we're not totally dissimilar on Snap. The one thing I will say is we actually had sort of a weird run where we were still continuing to add fans, and you know, we work with Nick and Conviva around a lot of our analytics there. And our numbers were actually decent from an awareness standpoint. I think what we stopped doing was, you know, a couple of years back, we had a huge investment in original content creation that was strictly for Snap. I don't think that makes sense for us anymore. I think if we had like a Snap Discover show or something like that, it would be a different story. Monetization is completely different then, obviously. So I think now, like, you know, something that I probably would have gasped at a year or two ago and just am kind of whatever about it now is, you know, I'm not precious about not taking some content from Instagram stories over to Snap. I think I'm not saying it's something we do daily, but when I look at a weekend like the Daytona 500 or one of our other big races for the year, maybe one of these iRacing events coming up, and I just want, even if I think there's a strong overlap of like 50 to 60% of those people on Snap and Instagram stories, I want to like max awareness. And if it's a light lift to just download and re-upload on Snap, I'm willing to do that. On the IGTV front, it's kind of interesting because in 2018 for the final, basically the playoffs, like the final 10 races of the year, we went really hard and we actually made an effort there. That was feed preview though. And it was really frustrating because we put all this effort in and it felt like no one watched it. So when we got back to the beginning of the year, I had actually cut that out of our strategy. Well, flash forward to they throw the feed preview in. And so then we were kind of scrambling to get back in because we started to see these crazy numbers that people were having from IGTV. So now we do have a couple of things that are regular features with IGTV, you know, whether it's race recaps weekly out of a weekend. We do these in-car camera recaps that are a really unique angle. And when you get that sort of full screen IGTV experience, it's really immersive and our fans really like it. So we've actually seen some pretty strong numbers there. That's kind of, but like I said, I mean, sometimes it's just timing, right? Like if we had been at a different time on Snap, you know, maybe we would feel differently about it. That timing example I gave about IGTV, you know, Facebook Watch was one that, you know, leading into the 2018 season, you know, I was really excited that we were one of the first sports properties that had an original content series that Facebook purchased with Bubba Wallace and Behind the Wall and his story of getting ready for the Daytona 500. Saw huge numbers there. I mean, that platform has completely changed now, though. Like the way that was prioritized in feed, I think, is a little bit different than what it is now. And I don't think we would necessarily launch that the same way. And maybe YouTube would be a better place for that right now. We're certainly sinking a ton of effort into YouTube because even though it's not a new platform, you know, NASCAR has kind of an interesting history with who owned the digital rights, and it sat outside of NASCAR Digital at one point. So did the YouTube strategy. So really what you've seen over the last 18 months is a all in, like, let's treat it like it's a brand new platform because we have a ton of room to grow, as Sam said, a ton of room for monetization. So it's easy to, you know, I think message value to leadership, not only from a monetization standpoint, but a priority audience too.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that you can think about, you know, kind of what you guys are both saying, and I think what we're all kind of talking about here are these emerging video platforms, right? They have a value to us, but then they also cost resources. And so one of the things that we've seen, this is kind of why you should be working with a good analytics partner, right, is we're looking at time spent. And we make it really easy to roll up all of these social platforms into one to be able to measure the amount of minutes consumed or average watch time across different platforms. This really gives you the ability to figure out, are the resources that I'm putting in actually resulting in something back, right? If we just look at the base level view counts or just engagements, I think we're just scratching the surface. So you guys talk about platforms like YouTube and TikTok and IGTV. These all really give you more robust data around minutes consumed and average watch time or retention rates. And so I think that's another big metric to think about in terms of the return that you're getting, is a lot of these platforms are video driven in nature. And we often forget that people spend time watching videos. Really quickly, it's very hard for us to even think about the amount of time that somebody spends watching a photo that we post on Instagram or reading a tweet that we make. And that's one of the advantages of video, is we can actually measure the impact of people's attention that we're actually having. So being able to look at the minutes consumed, being able to look at those types of insights really helps to understand, am I getting the attention of somebody on that platform? And is that something that I need to continue, right? Obviously, the watch times on YouTube in a lot of instances are probably going to be higher than content on other platforms because it's video driven. But we've seen in some instances, a great TikTok can have a pretty high average watch time as well, especially as more and more content gets longer and longer on that platform, which I think we're starting to see now.
Awesome. And I'm going to try and jump in here. There's a few questions. A couple people mentioned partnerships with media brands, ESPN, Barstool, affecting the content you're producing. Obviously, Chris, you guys have a pretty big partnership with Barstool, so I think that would probably be a good one for you to kind of jump in and touch on first.
Yeah, and honestly, I can answer it a little bit. It actually sits a little bit outside of my group and sits with brand marketing. And really, it's more of, how do we, I think this is like this is probably more like an influencer answer, but I think it's a really common misconception, and I don't know if anyone else here has encountered it, but it's like, hey, this influencer is doing this thing on their channels, like you guys should retweet it or you guys should post about it. And sometimes that's true, but sometimes like everyone needs to understand that the value of that influencer is being on their channels. And I will say the exception to that, if I could go back and redo one lesson from TikTok last year, this is my answer from that question earlier. Now I've decided normally I'm like, okay, all that matters is we want NASCAR on the influencer's channel that has 2 million followers. But what you've seen in TikTok, how one viral post can change your following. Like you get that video, like we had a video again that had about 22 million views, and it probably accounts for 60% of our followers or something like that right now. It all happened in just this surge. And, there were a couple of kids who, and I say kids, literally, I mean, they were like 12 and 15 years old that were at Homestead for our championship race last year. And they're the kind of kids who it's a sister who has like 3 million followers and a brother who has like 1 million followers. And I was so head down in our championship race weekend. And I was like, yeah, it's great. They're posting on their channels. If I could go back, I would have gotten them to do a few pieces for our channels. Cause I think the example that Sam had, about the guy who has, it wasn't one of your players. It was a musician who was responsible for the woe, basically. Like that would be huge for our channel. So I think, and that's not exactly an answer to your Barstool question. I think we're certainly plugged into like what they're doing. Like today they were doing, right before we got on, a live call-in show for a new NASCAR podcast. That's a huge win for the sport to have Clint Boyer, who's one of our more entertaining drivers, be a part of that podcast, be exposed. And as much as we can drum up interest there, I think that's a big win.
Oops, somebody's calling me.
Is that similar for you, Sam? Obviously, you guys have a little bit of kind of relationship with the NFL and the media, right?
Yeah.
Like that. But how does that, your media partnership, maybe even on the RSN level, kind of work for you guys when it comes to creating content across these emerging platforms?
I mean, it doesn't really, I think the biggest thing that we haven't, the NFL as a whole and each club hasn't sorted out yet is game footage. That is probably the biggest way that it impacts us. So you will not see one highlight on our TikTok TikTok channel, which off the top, that was a really, really hard thing to sort of work around, because it would be super easy to just put the Philly special on there and like be like, yay, us, like. And so I think ultimately it did make us better, because we had to actually be creative about it and speak the language of TikTok and learn what worked there and not just rely on highlights. So in that respect, our relationship with broadcast partners and with the league, affects the content in that way. Aside from that, though, that's about it. I mean, the league they've been great partners with, amplifying our content. I know that they definitely helped out the Chiefs a lot, who did a great job during the Super Bowl, working with those influencers. Like you said, Chris, they had a ton of influencer content because, of course, the Super Bowl, everybody's down there. So they've been great about helping us, because the rising tide sort of, raises everybody. But we don't really have the sort of relationship that you guys have with Barstool or any other necessarily publisher that we would be competing against per se. We just want Eagles fans and fans of TikTok to be following us, and we don't have those parameters, so that makes it a little bit easier as well.
Awesome. And I want to get, and we've kind of touched on it briefly in some of these questions people have asked and kind of danced around it. I think you guys have too, but where are you looking for inspiration on these platforms? Like, who is it that you're following that you're like, man, maybe that's something that we can incorporate? And then just what does that kind of like ideation loop look like from when you're talking about an idea to executing an idea to seeing someone else doing something and seeing how you can take your take on it?
Yeah. It's kind of like what Chris was saying. So, back when we first started TikTok, I was like, everybody's got to get on it. I don't care if you think that it's for kids. I don't care if you think it's dumb. If you're in the content, like social team, you're getting on TikTok. And now, of course, everybody's just as addicted to it as I am, but we do laugh all the time about how we get so many different types of content. Even like, me, Olivia, my intern who I mentioned, and then Julie, who's awesome as well. We're all sort of around the same age, around the same area, around the same background, and we have completely different TikTok For You pages. I mean, it could not be more different. So getting that inspiration from the users, I think there's a lot of people that are doing it great. I mean, I know everybody talks about Benny the Bull. He's doing awesome. Blue from the Colts doing awesome. There's a ton of teams that are killing it as well. But I like looking at those, but I almost like try not to pay too close attention, because then I think it's going to start to color the type of content that you create for your own audience. And there's a lot of overlap there. So I'd rather just do something, new, or something that maybe we're not jacking from somebody else. So the looking at like regular normal users and sort of how creative and unique they can be. And honestly, it blows my mind every single time. Those are the people that I get really inspired by, that we recreate videos from, that we try to collaborate with, because those are the ones that are doing it for free. Those are the ones that are making truly original content, and they don't have any sort of sales motive to it. It's just to make something cool. And that's where I take the most inspiration. So it's not a great answer because I'm not giving you like official accounts, but if you just keep scrolling and you'll find them. These people are truly talented and doing it for free. So.
Yeah. I don't know. I hate to say, like, I'm probably in three things. Like, one is, I'm just like living in whatever the trending hashtags are and trying to see if it feels like we have a take. I think almost trying to spend equal time, really watching people like Sam and a lot of the other teams and leagues that are represented, because I've tried to, I think we've gone through like, probably if you work for a pro team, NASCAR has probably followed you. That was me. And it's just because I think we wanted to see how the rest of the sports world was attacking it. And even some non-sports stuff, whether it's like, the Washington Post, who's really fun. And I think like we're able to steal some ideas from them around, and, maybe how you utilize an office space. And like, that's one piece of it. That's not the only thing we're doing on TikTok, obviously. We get a ton of inspiration from, other teams that we're following and stuff like that. And then honestly, just spending some time in the rabbit hole of For You and figuring out sort of what are those trends and things that feel like we could, potentially plug into. I think it's just that mix of inspiration of sports and non-sports that I would say has been really critical to us. A really random account I love that has like no bearing on NASCAR's account, but it like consistently makes me laugh. There's an account called Lab Shenanigans, and it's this guy who's like a medical student, and he takes like mostly sounds that are things I think from like the Kardashians and stuff like that, and takes like these very dramatic, like high drama moments and turns them really science nerdy into cells like talking to each other.
Yeah.
It's outstanding. It has nothing to do with my content, but I love it. So
see, that's the great stuff. Like I love seeing how people in our field are doing it. That's great. But like the truly creative, just off the wall, I mean, that's the sweet spot. And I'm glad that you shouted out the Washington Post, because they are obviously doing a great job and getting a lot of attention for it, rightfully so. Yeah, Dave's killing it. So
he also looks like he's lost his mind right now, let's be honest. But
he absolutely does.
Yeah.
Yes. Somebody needs to check on him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nick, from an inspiration standpoint and kind of the metrics you guys are tracking, what are some of the accounts that people may not have heard of that are performing really well, and why do you think some of that is such?
Oh, well, there are a lot of accounts, believe it or not, that I think that's one of the things we've been surprised about, is how many of these young influencer creators have quickly gotten to millions of followers on the platform so quickly. I mean, we're looking at people like Man Billy. So this is a shameless plug for our TikTok benchmark and strategy report. But we actually interviewed Chris and other folks and talked a little bit more about the influencer side. So somebody like Man Billy is creating a lot of really great content. Opera Americana, CJ Opera Americana. I still follow the core influencers from YouTube as well. So people like David Dobrik, to see how they react and interact and jump on different trends. Obviously, I've followed what Charli D'Amelio, if I say that right. She is somebody that Joey from our office at Conviva, he follows and talks about all the time. And I take inspiration from Joey, from our younger employees too, because it's something that we have a whole group of people that are generations below us. And I even saw somebody in the comments ask, wanted to know if you guys are also taking inspiration from any teenagers in your lives. Joey, you're not a teen. It's okay. But he spends a lot of time on TikTok, and we're talking about that, and we're talking about trends and discussions too. So collaborating and just working with other people, like you said, Chris, I'm bringing ideas to them. They're bringing different new accounts to me that I didn't know. So yeah, and you can check out some more in the ebook. But yeah, pass it back to you guys. Are you guys talking to any teens in your life? Any of the youths about the TikTok?
Or the YouTube, right? The YouTube.
Yeah, the YouTube, the internet. No, I don't really know that many teens, but what people that I do talk to are my coworkers, and I take so much joy. And this has happened many times when my coworkers will come up to me and be like, "My kid wants to know if they can be in a TikTok. Like, do you know what that is?" And I'm like, "Boy, do I ever." And I am 100%, once this is all over and we're back to normal, I'm 100% going to be doing a lot of take your kid to work day TikToks, I imagine, because I love it. And I love that these kids are like advocating for us at home and like showing like very high level executives our TikToks and being like, "Look, this is cool." And I'm like, yes. So I am a big fan of that, and I will continue to, use that as often as I can. But yeah, no, I mean, I follow a lot of teenagers. It's a little weird being like over 30 and following a lot of teenagers on this app, but I do. And they're part of the people that I think are doing something that's truly creative. And so you'd be an idiot not to look at that and wonder about how we could, be inspired by it. But yeah, no, I wish I had like a teenager just like chilling that I could ask questions. I ask a lot of interns. They're a little old though, to be honest. So what can you do? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Not a ton of teens running around our office or in my day-to-day life. So, I mean, I think exactly what Sam said about living kind of vicariously through observation of a lot of the teens who are on the platform. And that's where that time spent in the For You part of it really tends to pull that through for me, because as you follow some of these other people like the Hype House kids and stuff like that, For You is going to start feeding you little ancillary parts of their universe. And I think that's kind of where I'm taking my learnings right now.
Yeah. And obviously people will age up, right? I think that's the one thing that we always kind of see about social platforms too, as we talk about emerging platforms. There tends to be generational platforms, right? I think that if you're, 30 or older, you kind of came on the scene with Facebook, right? Maybe even a little bit younger, right? And then you had the whole Instagram generation that was kind of a different world. And then you had the Snapchat generation, and now you have the TikTok. So these platforms also tend to age up as people grow. So you'll see people adapt and evolve. And I think it's important because there's going to be, not so young people obviously on TikTok as well as that platform grows and evolves. I saw some comments about that. Obviously, definitely teens aren't the only ones on there, but we have found pretty overwhelmingly that young women are the primary demographic today, although that is growing for sure. But yeah, it's really interesting because you often, just like as we think about purchasing decisions in more traditional marketing, right? We have consumption habits that are also formed at very young ages too. And I think that it's really interesting to be able to see these different platforms. And that's also really important for any organization, right? Teams and sports leagues and media companies, obviously, in particular, right? Building those fandoms, building that loyalty at an early age, but then also growing and evolving with that. And that's also a job that I think we all have to have if we are serving a fan, all right? Because you have to live with them through all different stages of their life as things happen. Same thing like we're dealing with right now with kind of the troubling times that we're all having right now, these unique circumstances, right? And we have to talk to all ages of different people, all on these same types of platforms, and that's also a skill in and of itself that we always have to think about as we evolve and open up to new platforms as we head into them.
Awesome. Well, we got about 8 minutes or so. I want to try and dive into all these questions over here. So I'm going to scroll through and see if we can get to a few.
I think we lost Adam.
Adam, I think you're muted yourself.
You're muted.
I muted myself. There we go. For these webinars, you end up muting yourself sometimes. But I think this is an interesting one. I mean, Chris already asked this, but how long on average are you spending, making TikToks, Samantha? I'll pass it to you.
It honestly depends. We did a live stream a couple weeks ago, overnight. So that took 12 hours, making a TikTok live stream. But like reasonably, like I said, Olivia is really focused on it. That's her not main role, but her main responsibility every day. She knows that she must post a TikTok at least once a day. And sometimes it's something that's easily repurposed, and sometimes it's something that involves like a real shoot. So I would say it ranges anywhere from, 15 minutes to maybe 2 hours, and we try to be efficient with our time as well. If we're shooting something with cheerleaders, we'll shoot 10 things with them. The same thing with our mascot Swoop, things like that, so that we're not just chipping away at it. For player related ones, we can grab them for 30 seconds in the locker room and we can make a TikTok out of it. So it's super hard to put an exact number on it. But I think that's part of the charm. And we all are like getting our staff involved and getting everybody committed to it. So everybody is contributing to TikTok in some way or another. So that helps take off the resource pull.
Awesome. Thanks. And there's another question here from Anthony. It says, what suggestions do you have on growing audience via TikTok for brands with an older audience, traditionally older audience?
I would ask, or do you really need to be on TikTok right now? TikTok's going to get older for sure. I would take a long, hard look at, is that really the best way to utilize your time? And if it is, then the answer could totally be yes. It's look at the For You page, look at some of try and see if you can like content that might be related, keep watching, because then you're going to start getting something that relates to more of an older audience. You're going to start finding those niche groups, and then you can start to consider what the content looks like there. But I think first and foremost, I make the account, sit on the account name for sure, but really have an honest talk with yourself about if that's the best use of your time, because it might not be. In 6 months, maybe, but right now, maybe not. So that would be what I would say.
Kristen, for you?
Pretty much same thing. I think I would advise them to go do probably exactly what we did, which was go watch, look at hashtags for a month, look at For You for a month, follow some brands that are similar to yours, and start to feel out, of what's doing well. Do you feel like you have content like that? Or could you make content like that? That's where I go back to like, I went in and I was like, here are my buckets I have. I've got like the wholesome inspirational, I've got the funny, and I've got like the action basically. And I don't know whose brand this is or what they represent, but if you don't feel like you can create those buckets and you're just going to be there and try and, I don't know, do something that you take a brand message there that doesn't make sense, then it's probably not a great use of your time.
Definitely get the name though. Samantha said it. You don't want to have to go into a situation where you can't get your brand name and have to do the real NASCAR. We don't want to get back to those days again.
Always get the name. Yeah.
Courtney asked this too, and I think this is interesting, and Nick could probably have some more insight into this too, and if Chris and Samantha haven't done. But she said, I know we've mainly discussed the content aspect of this, but has anyone explored media buying / ad placement through TikTok?
So we did look into it, not so much ad placement, but we had a conversation with TikTok about, is there something that we do boosted posts? How does that look right now? Like, what is sort of the opportunity that TikTok has as it stands today? And sort of the short answer was it's not much today. I think TikTok, you'll see tons of changes, and you see it all the time on the platform. It'll continue to evolve. For us, we did not go down the road of ad placement. You could do it. I would say it's pretty expensive as I understand it. So that's why you often see like movie trailers or, big brands like Nike or Apple or Lady Gaga or whatever. Like, so I'm not sure what your brand is, but for me, that's just like not in our budget right now. But we would absolutely take advantage of any sort of like boosting, sponsored, content-based not monetization, but buying once they make that available. But as I understand it today, it's not yet. So we are going the old fashioned way and with all the organic content that we can muster.
Yeah, we've heard from folks that they are definitely interested in boosting their content, running more ads, even buying ads for their brand partners when that starts to increase. Obviously, TikTok is a really new platform. They seem to, from our discussions and discussions with customers, like with you guys on the line, they're evolving and quickly moving and kind of following a similar model like most social platforms. Right, same thing with Snapchat. You couldn't boost any posts, you couldn't run any ads early on, and they then rolled out more of a self-serve ad management tool, and it evolves from there. So I think we are going to see more of that roll out in the next year for sure. And this time next year, things continue to go the way that they go. I'm sure that we'll all be working a little bit more on boosted and similar types of insights with TikTok. In terms of like the placements themselves, I think there's also an opportunity once again for selling placements for your brand partners and tying that in. So it depends on the size of your organization, obviously. If you're a really small business or small school, that's probably, candidly, it's probably too early to do something like that. But if you are somebody that is, a Fox Sports, a NASCAR, an NFL, obviously bigger media partners and bigger brands that are tuning in today, there are more creative ways that you could go and use the paid function of TikTok, especially around sponsorships and branded content.
Chris, any thoughts on that side from your guys' standpoint?
No, I mean, I think I've heard probably the same stuff Sam did, and definitely it's right now a high cost to entry. I mean, I think there's certainly if you're someone like NASCAR and you're evaluating the media buying strategy, which sits outside of our group, when they evaluate the whole scope of media buying, right? Whether it's out of home, whether it's different digital ad networks, whether it's a media partnership like they have with Barstool, and you can carve out whatever that large investment is to do a 1 day or 7 day, 3 day hashtag challenge or something like that. And then, oh, by the way, spend the money to go out to influencers and get content that goes with that. I think when I looked at it and saw the numbers, I think if you have the budget, it seems like a really efficient spend compared to some more traditional ones. It's just a really expensive club to be a part of right now, as opposed to like a $50, $100 boost to a single piece of content.
Yeah,
so that makes sense. Well, while we're finishing up here, I got a couple more minutes, realistically, kind of right at the end here. But there was a question from Eric, and I think this is really kind of a good question for everyone. Is at a previous position, we did Snapchat takeovers where we gave one of our players full control with guidelines, obviously, of that account. Would that be worthwhile with TikTok? And are you guys seeing success if you have done it?
Yeah. So for us, when we first launched TikTok, I got a lot of what is that? But we have players that trust us, so we did get participation. And now, 9 months later, whatever, we do have our first 2 players on TikTok as of like this week. Zach Ertz and Julie Ertz made a dual account, and then Brandon Graham made an account literally last night. So they're starting to hop on, and we've reposted them. We've repurpose their Instagram stories. We did that with Jake Elliott the other day, our kicker. He was doing trick shots. Would we ever give full access to an account with like a password? Probably not. It's not necessary, really. It's not like Instagram stories. Even when we do an Instagram story takeover, we typically ask the guy to send it to us, and then we can sort of post as needed. Another layer. I mean, these guys are super savvy, but it's still just another layer of protection and approval and all that. But player-generated content, player-submitted content is huge for us. It'll continue to be huge and gets bigger and bigger, especially over the last couple of weeks. Something we've always done, but now we are very glad that we've built these relationships with these guys because we do need their help in filling out our accounts. But yeah, probably not like a takeover per se.
Yeah, no takeovers for us, but I think what you guys did with the Ertz's the plural, is the Ertz Eye. I think like kind of making that a nice little trade-off where it's like, hey, we're going to take this content, but we're going to drive towards you is a nice way to sort of build them up because the platform doesn't really give you a way to do it right now, like sharing a feed post, Instagram stories or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. I think a takeover is a great idea. I'm going to buck this trend. Obviously, I don't have an account to try my own takeovers on, but we did quite a bit. Obviously, we did a lot of takeovers for NASCAR when we worked with you guys and created content on your Snap account back in the day. And the reason that I like it, and once again, I don't have data yet to support this, but what we have found is that personality is what is the key on TikTok. And we see that ability to have a person and a voice and to have a personality, right? I think that's why we see mascots do really well too. I think that there's a lot to be had there. And I think the nice thing about a takeover, just as a creative device in and of itself, is once again, it's something that you can do cross-platform. So you can use, instead of posting those TikToks to Twitter, you could tell everybody that Zach Ertz is taking over your TikTok account today and maybe maybe do a TikTok with Zach challenge or something else. So I would say that obviously it's still early days, so we haven't seen a ton of these quote unquote takeovers, but I don't think it's a terrible idea to try. I think we're definitely in the test and learn phase.
Yeah, and I'm with it. I think it's just the question of like, do you give them the password? I'm more about like the logistics of it. Like, do you give them the password or do you have them? Right now, we've asked players to film ones for us and we'll post it, so it's like sort of a pseudo takeover without giving them giving us the stress of being like, here's our very difficult password. So don't try to hack us. It's like a 16-digit password. So yeah, but I agree with you. I think the voice and, having that personal touch is going to continue to be more and more important.
So the password is Samantha Wood is the best.
Yeah. Well, if you were watching with all the hacking over the last few weeks or months, our passwords are 16-digit, 2-factor authentication, not found in a dictionary. They're literally just like gibberish and
and everything like that. That's it.
So take your best shot, and they all come to my phone. So you got to go through me first. I'm just telling everybody how to hack it. Please don't. Thank you.
Well, as they always say, time flies when you're having fun. Really appreciate you guys. We actually went a little bit over. Did want to again say thanks to Chris, Sam, and Nick for joining us and presenting a ton of great information, insights. Hopefully you guys were able to take a lot away from this. Sorry about not being able to get all your questions. As you guys can imagine, there was a lot there. As I mentioned earlier, there's going to be a whole replay of this. You guys will get all of that in your email likely within the next 2 to 3 hours after it renders and it gets sent out to you. We've also dropped the guide both in the chat, and they will follow up with the guide as well if you guys have any more information on that. But again, really want to say thanks to Chris, Sam, and Nick for joining us, and for everyone who's watching. Hopefully you guys continue to stay safe and stay healthy, and hopefully we'll be back to real sports sooner rather than later. But until then, let us know if you guys need anything too, and lean on us for any type of content that you're looking for, stories that you're trying to figure out. We're happy to kind of try and guide you guys from an editorial perspective too. So again, thanks again for everyone, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Stay safe, everybody.
Thanks.